right, and we'll go ahead and start the June 9th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals workshop. And the first item on the workshop agenda is going to be a new business item. This is going to be 1053 Broadway. 1053 Broadway is owned by Druthers, who's also the applicant, Druthers Brewing Company. The area variance in question here is a form-based part of our ordinance. So the form-based part of our code indicates that a front deck cannot extend into the right-of-way or any easement in a mixed-use form-based zoning district. And this is specifically the variance that the applicant is requesting to allow the construction of a 13-foot wide, 110-foot long deck in the public right-of-way. And this is 1053 Broadway. Druthers Brewing Company, for context, in the surroundings, it's a mixed-use warehouse district. That's on the corner of Broadway and Bridge Street. And you can see here the zoning for it is all mixed-use form-based warehouse. There's a tiny corner up here of some mixed-use neighborhood edge and residential townhouse. But for the most part, it's mixed-use form-based warehouse. So I'm gonna bring up the application. Actually, we have this one a little late, so I'm gonna just go ahead and refer to the application for the rest of this presentation. See if you can see what I'm seeing. This is the site plan for the porch, or the deck rather. So you can see the dimensions of the deck here. The applicant is looking to obtain a permanent easement from the city of Albany. The initial conversation started with the applicant requiring an area variance before the Corporation Council would consider a permanent easement for the property. And if you can look in the site plan here, the property line actually ends at the facade of the structure. So the entirety of the deck would be in the public right-of-way. So the applicant is looking to extend their seating area outdoors. The application mentions that the main reason for this would be due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, listing it as a safer alternative for customers and staff, and that there would be difficulty in the restaurant surviving without the outdoor dining area, and by extension, the variance being granted. So they tried opening or purchasing the property behind them, which I believe is owned by a chemical company, but the looks like they were prevented from doing so. And a alternative considered for that also was a rooftop deck, but was found to be too costly to have that option done. And the structural capacity of the structure would not support a rooftop deck and would require some reinforcing and require some modifications, such as adding elevator service to have that overall cost be prohibitive for the applicant. So for neighborhood or character of the neighborhood, just to go back a little bit, there is a parking lot owned by Druthers across the street, down the street a little bit, and a chemical plant with a truck yard next door. I think National Grid also has some holdings there. The applicant is indicating that because of the industrial nature of the area, the addition of the front porch or deck into the public right-of-way would not be out of character with the neighborhood. And for the context of staff comments here, there's no other deck in the area that would be protruding into the public right-of-way. This would be the only one. Substantiality, the applicant indicates here that the intent of the ordinance would be to ensure property owners aren't building on property without city permission. And as such, the applicant is indicating that because they're seeking for a permanent easement from the Common Council, that contextually the requested variance would not be a substantial deviation from the prevailing regulation. And the applicant indicated that there would be no expected impacts from the elements in the application.
Hey, Luis.
Yes.
Jeff just texted me and he said that he's unable to join as a panelist. So can you send him a panel invite or pull him out of the participants list?
He's not on the participants list, but I'll see if I can send him an invitation.
Okay. And it looks like Martha is also stuck in the attendees as opposed to being on the board.
Okay. Let's get her in first.
Just as a note, your email is up on the screen.
Okay.
Just in
Thanks.
case you don't want to share something in your other screen. So
Yeah. It didn't look that interesting, so I figured I wouldn't say anything, Martin. Oh, that's why Martha wasn't with us. She was posing for a headshot.
Bear with me while I try to find the email. Do you mean Jeff Quain?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, let me get him the panelist invite. So I have the emails sent out automatically. Is anyone else having any issue in receiving their reminders and their panelist invites for each webinar?
my only suggestion would be I got my panelist invite at 6. So if there's a way to automate the panelist email for a little bit earlier, just saves time from scrambling.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that invite went out, and
Okay.
we should be seeing him shortly, hopefully.
Okay. Do you want to scroll back to the beginning of the factors we have to look at, Luis?
Yes.
Thanks.
Let's see.
Did you want to look at his email anymore, Martin?
No.
Okay.
I don't have time to read my own emails.
Yeah. So, then you want to start with your answer to element number 1? Does anyone on the board have any questions about element 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced by granting this variance?
I think as we're relating to this and the form-based code development in this area, I think a little bit of context from staff is helpful, because certainly the intent, to my understanding, of developing the form-based code was to enable a bit of the support and transition from being a solely industrial area to encourage residential and commercial development of the nature like druthers and other types of businesses. And so it would be good to have a little bit of context on how the form-based code was drafted and what the interpretation is from the department, as far as, does it apply to structures like decks for dining, or was it more intended to apply to building structures? And I guess some context as far as the comprehensive plan that informed the development of the form-based code would be helpful. We're certainly not talking about elements like an area variance. We're certainly talking something that was developed stylistically. So I'd like to get better educated on the development of the form-based code for this district and the reasoning behind the requirements that structures couldn't extend into the right of way from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah, if I understand correctly, just what the intent of the form-based zoning
Mm-hmm.
was. Okay.
Because
And
that speaks, I think that does speak to the character of the neighborhood. We certainly have other restaurants with decks that, and you had mentioned that don't extend into the public right of way. That's kind of the trigger for this. So my reading of this is it isn't the deck or the construction of the deck that is in conflict with the district. It's the placement. So that's where I just need a little bit more of a better understanding of that.
yeah, I can do that for you. So the generally though with form-based districts, I can at least say that we do have a what is allowed, kind of an allowances for what's considered like in the front setback area,
Mm-hmm.
where things that aren't traditionally allowed in the regular mixed use districts or the residential districts, but they generally end with the lot line, and so typically the the right of way is not something that is considered included into the form-based zoning standards. Uh,
Yeah.
and part of the specifically in the form-based uh, standards, the form-based standards specifically mention that the porches and decks wouldn't be able to go into the public right of way. So that part is specifically, at least in the form-based, it's not coming from like a general design standard or anything. It's specifically in the form-based, for all form-based zoning districts, they aren't allowed in the public right of way. But I can definitely get that context for you for background on how it was developed and what the general
Okay.
intent.
Okay, so it's been a while, Luis, but I went to the charrette on this with the community input.
I did
And
too.
I don't remember, was the issue of keeping porches out of the public right of way or encroachments generally out of the public right of way, was that brought up by anyone in the charrette, or was there some other reason that that planning wanted to keep things out of the public right of way?
Follow up with that.
Okay. And then I guess if you could speak to while you're following up on this for the board, if you could speak to what the character of the neighborhood is that restriction on being in the public right of way is trying to create, that would be helpful, I think, for that element. Are there any other questions the board wants to ask about this of Luis?
Are we sticking to these one by one, or can I jump around?
I'm done with one. If no one has any other questions, we can go to number two. And he did speak to this issue of whether it could be done with some other way. He talked about trying to build on the roof and buy the property behind him. Were there any other questions about alternatives sought that you all want to ask about?
Yeah. Would this be possible? The way I am understanding this is that this interpretation is tied to the creation of a structure in the right of way, a la a deck. Is it possible to achieve the same benefit without the deck by merely providing outdoor tables like other restaurants have done? And in some circumstances, I would imagine in the public right of way, I'm familiar with, New Scotland Avenue and Madison Avenue as prime examples where there's seating out in front of the restaurant without a deck. And that's something the applicant could add to the application to convey that as an alternative considered. The other thing I'm just curious about is whether the need for an elevator is a requirement of, I don't believe, of building code, or it is merely a comfort and convenience factor. And finally, I think if we're going to operate on the alternatives, the merits of alternatives considered, what a thumbnail sketch would be for the cost of the alternative being cost prohibitive.
Okay. Are there other questions from the board? You're all looking thoughtful. Yeah, and I think to follow up on your question, Martin, if we could ask the applicant to answer the question of why they believe that there's a need for a permanent structure which triggers the variance as opposed to temporary tables. They could be put out and taken in every night.
Or just not a permanent, it could be there for the summer and then the winter it's, it's semi-permanent, I guess is that's an oxymoron, but I think you know what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, I mean, can they do this without asking for a variance?
Mm-hmm. Picnic tables, perhaps, but that's got to be part of the record.
Yeah. Anyone have any more questions for element 2? Okay, let's go to number 3. If they could just answer the question, because it is a substantial variance, and I think they need to contend with that. And they also need to, you might, when you're bringing that issue to their attention, Luis, you should point out to them that we're constrained to grant, if we do grant, the smallest variance possible. And they're asking for the entire property, which is about as substantial as you could get. So have they thought about something smaller, which is half of 100 feet, or perhaps not? I mean, I don't know if 13 feet is a magic number or if there's some connection to the ADA, but if they could do a smaller deck and thus we could grant a smaller variance.
I'm also curious, it looked like from the site plan that they were planning on constructing a sidewalk or preserving a sidewalk. I don't recall a sidewalk being there. So just a clarification would be helpful, because I think that's one of the considerations when we talk about obstructions in the right of way, is being able to preserve accessibility. And if preserving or installing a sidewalk is part of the project, I think that should be touted in the application.
Okay. Are there any other questions about 3, or can we go on to 4? Which I think the applicant answered relatively well.
Except for one thing. When I go into 4, we talk about impact on the environment, but it also includes noise and odor and light. I would imagine noise and light would be impacts. I think it would be helpful for them to discuss those impacts on the environment in regards to the expansion of the business to outdoors. Now, certainly that I understand that without this variance and tables on the street, that would certainly be possible. But I think to supplement our record and make sure we've considered it, that should be part of the application, at least in mention.
Okay.
I know this is not a residential district, but we ask a question. That part of the application should be answered. It's not dispositive to say there'll be additional noise. I don't know that the trucks parked across the street will mind, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, there's no residential for a couple of blocks, but it's worth asking and being informed upon. Mm-hmm. And then the last one, Luis, is just you might want to talk to them about the fact that the alleged difficulty is virtually always self-created because of the nature of the law. But they just need to, understand that. And again, as Martin said, it's not dispositive.
No.
Do we have any other questions that we want to have Luis ask these folks before they come in 2 weeks?
Wondering when they say that these changes are necessary because of the COVID restrictions and stuff. Mm-hmm. I know that they're kind of loosening. The restrictions are loosening, right? So are these like current issues that they're having, or are they forecasting? Do they think are they expecting more COVID restrictions in the future? I know we don't really know, but I'm just curious because the restrictions are loosening.
Yeah, so to the extent that's their rationale, do they still want to do this if, as the governor said, all the restrictions will leave in July?
Right, yeah.
Which
curious.
May relieve restrictions, it may not relieve public perception of safety. I know that people, and summertime complicates it because outdoor dining is just preferable, but that might be one thing they want to talk about is people's proclivity to eat outside rather than inside based upon their personal apprehensions about going into indoor confined spaces.
Yeah, I think it's worth addressing just because it is an issue, as you point out, Serena and Martin. Okay. Does anyone have anything else we want to ask them to address when they do their presentation? Okay, question, Luis. Does this have to go to the planning board too?
You're muted. Or
Yeah.
I don't believe so. If the variance is granted, the applicant then would proceed to the Corporation Council for a permanent easement, and because it would be in a permanent easement, no further review would be necessary unless the Corporation Council would recommend that.
If they are building that sidewalk, though, that would require the planning board to approve it, though, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure if it's in the if it's in the right of way and it's not related to a minor development plan review, it may not. But I'll check in with our staff to see if they're planning on requiring any planning board review for the sidewalk improvements.
Okay. What else we got, Louis?
That's like, can you go back to the site plan real quick?
Yeah.
Maybe I want to be sure I'm asking the right question. But it looked to me like there was a preservation or an inclusion of a sidewalk in that area, which would be, to be honest, if you have a restaurant, that would be helpful to have people be able to safely get in and out. Proposed concrete walk it's on the left-hand side. Proposed concrete walk, it looks like a sidewalk. Or that might be pointing to something else. Exposed concrete.
No, they're saying that they're going to put a sidewalk in front of the whole thing.
Yeah, okay. Yep, I see it. New concrete or asphalt surface to accommodate access. There it is. Place. Okay, yeah. So I was right and 5 feet wide, which is compliant. So, okay.
So, Luis, are they asking for an easement to put the sidewalk in too? Because that is another 5 feet in addition to the 17-foot deck.
I'll have to follow up with Corporation Council on that.
Is it though? Well, yeah, let's follow up because we should be putting in sidewalks. I mean, they're what easements are for.
Okay, yeah, so if they can straighten that out, that would be helpful. Okay. Anything else, folks? All right, what else you got for us, Luis? Yeah, mute again. I can't see him. Hang on.
All right. So the next case is 380 Whitehall Road. And as we mentioned previously, this section needs to be a little bit more updated. The opacity and chain link fence area variances were removed, withdrawn, as the applicant was able to update their plan to remove the need for those variances. And for new information, I have here something submitted to us a few days ago. Refer back to the documentation. It's a different one. Okay. So the applicant has submitted some additional evidence in response to the comments of the board at the previous meeting. So the applicant indicates that the 100% opacity is related only to the playground area. As the board had mentioned, a question on whether or not it was needed across the entire area there. And so the applicant indicates it's only around the playground area to deter individuals observing children at play. So the applicant mentioned the unified facilities criteria on security fences and gates as the need or the requirement. The applicant provided an excerpt of the relevant sections of those guidelines to indicate where they derived the 8-foot minimum from. And it mentions the fence height and also top guards, which would not be part of this application. The top guards, I believe, are referring to the upper portion of a fence that would support strands of barbed wire around the fence, which which the applicant is not doing as part of this application. The
Okay,
applicant
thanks,
provided.
Louis.
Yep.
Do you have anyone have any other questions about this so far?
We believe we asked them about considerations for other types of security mechanisms that would minimize the variance, either through the planting of, I'll call them defensive landscaping. I brought up honey locust as a good example of a plant that keeps people away. That would not only provide an added benefit to scaling the fence, but also likely keep them away from even approaching the fence as a tech, and not as a security technique, but a way to minimize the variance in bringing the fence height closer to compliance. And curious if they've put some analysis together about that or considered that as a way to both increase the security of the fence and also to provide a possibility to minimize the variance.
You're on mute, Louis.
Apologies. The question was posed to the applicant. The email was sent to request specific information regarding that. The applicant provided an email which has been put on the record as well. And the applicant indicates that the arborvitae does not prevent entry because of its tree nature, and provided a picture showing an example of what the tree would look like, and would indicate that an individual would be able to still would not be able to prevent an intruder from getting in.
Sure, I think we agree on that front. Arborvitae is more of a screening type of landscaping, but honey locust is more of a security-esque landscaping. It doesn't provide screening. It's a thorny bush that provides for, in this case, security to keep people from getting close to the fence. And being the fence meets the opacity guidelines, it's not something where we're concerned about the screening. But barb bushes and things, if planted there, are they possible to use those types of plants? I don't mean honey locust is specific, but as an example of.
Okay, yeah, I'll relate to that. I know they mentioned the response to honey locust, but I'll see if they can provide evidence of any other types of.
Yeah, thorn bushes, things
Thorn
like that.
bushes, yeah.
Interesting. Any other thoughts or questions from the board? Okay, and just a question for you all. Did you get the email that Louise forwarded from Martha? Okay. So check out those links in between now and our next meeting so that you'll have a chance to familiarize yourself with that. Martha, do you have anything to add on updates with your contact other than what you sent today?
Oh, I can send my email in the chat box, but I'm happy to answer any other questions or just to have a discussion with any board members.
Okay, but no updates other than what you sent today?
Correct.
Okay. So we're still awaiting some answers from police and security agencies, which we may or may not get by the time of the next hearing. We asked a bunch of questions of the applicants. Did anyone have anything else that they wanted to ask, since we're going to communicate with them between now and then?
So when it came to question 3, are we not able to get any information about other security measures that facilities have taken around the state?
So that's accurate. I've reached out to the State Attorney General's office, the Civil Rights Bureau, and I haven't heard back yet, but I'll follow up with them.
Okay. Could you scroll up on question 5, Louise?
I am concerned about the referencing materials that are not publicly accessible as best management practices.
Well, yeah, and if we were going to rely upon them for our decision, we'd have to have them in the record.
We would be making a decision without having a record in that case, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think they necessarily, when we're talking about fence security, need to be related to specifically religious organizations, correct?
That would be
If
for
we're
them to
looking
argue.
at the record for fence types that are providing security for any type of facility, well, no, maybe I'm talking myself out of this now. Never mind.
No, I mean, their argument is based in part, at least, upon a special vulnerability that religious institutions of a certain type have.
Yep.
So if they're gonna, they would have to make an argument that somehow they're more like Walmart than what they originally came to us as.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to scroll that up? Is there anything else as you keep going down the ways? All right. That's the Martin attack shrub issue. Okay. So is everybody okay to wait for whatever we might get from the law enforcement agencies between now and 2 weeks from now? Or do you have other questions that you want us to ask the applicant to address? All right, I'll take that as none. Louise, did you get a copy of the Jewish Life article, I think it was, that Mark Gronich wrote and dropped off at the planning department?
I'm not aware of that, the article being dropped off. I'll check in with staff. I wasn't aware of that, but I'll look for that. Did you want me to add
Okay,
that to
it's
the
my
record?
understanding, since he couldn't come and had written a letter for the record, that he also wrote an article in the Upper Hudson Valley Jewish newspaper, and it dropped a copy off with you all at the planning department. So what I'll do is he gave me a copy. I'll bring it in, and if you can photocopy it and send it to everybody, so they have that for the record also.
Okay, yep.
Okay. Want to have anything else on this, or I think that wraps us up for tonight, right, Louis?
No, we actually have one more. This
okay.
is for 40 South Manning.
Yes.
So 40 South Manning has had some additional documentation provided to us, I believe that was a couple days ago. So for this one, there was some clarifications on whether or not the fence was protruding into the public right-of-way. As I mentioned previously in the meeting, it doesn't appear, according to our mapping tool, that it looks to be in a public right-of-way. And the applicant provided some documentation to show that it wasn't in the right-of-way, or to evidence that. Let's see. There were some responses here regarding the public response, or regarding the public opposition. But I believe that if you wanted to address those, we can try to address those, but they look like they're more addressed to the individual rather than the board's questions. And they did mention that they might be looking to get a dog. It's one of the board's questions on that. But apart from that, it looks to be that's the extent of it. Right. The rest of it, this looks like it goes into the specific the specific neighbor who had the objection to the fence, as opposed to the board's questions.
Yeah.
But this is just supporting documents for the fence line and showing it within property lines. I believe this might be a little hard to read the way it traditionally reads. The lot lines would actually be, oops, if I can get my mouse. can't get my mouse to show here, but the lot lines would be the bold lines around, oh, here it is. This area here. These lines here would be the bounding lines for the lot. So this would be a little inaccurate in how it's described. I believe that our lot lines, the way it's showing in Map Geo, has the fence within the lot lines and not outside the boundaries of the lot lines. And this may also be just the way that the lot lines line up on our map, because you can see here, the structure is crossing over a lot line here, which is more the imperfection of our mapping tool than it is the house actually crossing over property lines.
But we certainly can't grant a variance if it's going to be constructed over the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
we can request the applicant provide a survey to be able to be sure if there is a boundary dispute.
Yeah, there might be one when they bought the house that would indicate the distance from or where the lot line is. That would be just helpful.
Okay.
Because if this is
Didn't
going to
they
send
say-
beyond,
Yeah, didn't they say that they got a survey to settle the boundary dispute?
I believe
with the
so.
neighbor?
Yeah, and they talked about that in response to Ms. Leed's comments that there was a survey that was developed that shows that the fence would be built on their property.
Okay, I'll see if we can request that from the applicant for the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that would be it for the for additional evidence being provided for this record. And it's just a photo here of like the where the fence is currently at now.
Oh, that's helpful. Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any more things that we want to ask for, or are you all satisfied by receiving this stuff so far?
Richard, I had one question I was just looking for clarification on from the applicant. In their presentation, they mentioned that one of the reasons they aren't considering any type of bushes or trees is that it would take 3 to 5 years to grow. And in that time, 2 of their children would be off to college. So I was just wondering, in that case, they've owned the house for about 10 years. Is there something that's changed since they've owned the house where there's been an increase in foot traffic, or, something that makes them want the additional privacy now, especially when, their kids are leaving in, the next 5 years? Because I can't imagine, that foot traffic has increased that greatly since the time they've been there. So they could just clarify, what's changed and, in the past 10 years, they fence now.
Yeah, if you could ask them that, Luis, that would be helpful. And I guess to piggyback on that, if they're saying it's not worth it to put the bushes in because the kids will be gone, does that mean that it really doesn't bother them that much? Because if they don't get the additional screening in 3 years, it doesn't matter to them? I mean, that's sort of how I interpret that. Maybe that's unfair to them, but if they're really saying that this is only about keeping people from being able to see their children, they should probably be more specific about that. So, okay. Does anyone have any further questions on this? Gosh, you guys must all be hot, no air conditioning. You're not a lively bunch tonight. Okay, do we have anything else, Luis?
That would be it. The rest of the items are inactive still, with no indication that they may be on the agenda for June's meeting. We have 255 to 271 Clinton Avenue, 1415 Washington Avenue, and 36 Justin, none of which have any further updates as of right now. And just for the record, all 3 of these cases currently have been referred for Albany County Planning Board review and recommendation, just because they're nearby to a city or state road.
Wouldn't that be true also for druthers?
Yes, the three
Yeah.
active ones on the agenda were all referred.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Pearl.
All right. In that case, keep your eyes open. We'll be continuing to receive more stuff about these cases as far as I can tell. And I will see you all in 2 weeks.
Public hearing, 2 weeks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.